Hello, everyone. Mild. The call won't work anymore. There's the green one. There's the yellow one. Look at that. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Carrow Road. See, there it is. The amazingly bright floodlights that we now get to enjoy. Happy Tuesday evening to you. Norwich City have won a game of football, which is the first time they've done it in this season. Of course, first time in the Championship as well. Bearing in mind we're now 4 games in. And they've done it 2-1 against Huddersfield, who were down to 10 men for most of the second half. So if I was to underline it, I would say that this should have been far more straightforward than the last 10 minutes or so would have led you to believe it was and felt. But Norwich got there in the end. They got the points. They did what they needed to. Yes, they made it hard work against 10 men, but you have to remember that the reason they were playing 10 men was because Tom Lees had to commit a professional foul as the last man on Josh Sargent to prevent Josh Sargent going through and scoring. So, it was due to Norwich's pressure that Huddersfield were in that situation as well. And in all honesty, Norwich could have been 3-0 up after 20 minutes rather than 2-0 up after 16. They could have scored another 2 or 3 in the second half with the volume of chances they had against 10 men. This should have been arguably more comfortable when it was in terms of the scoreline. But in all honesty, I was also watching those last 9 minutes thinking, just imagine if they go and concede an equaliser. Just imagine if Grant Hanley hadn't put the block in on, I think it was on Caroma actually, in the last few moments, because Norwich again looked open. Dean Smith actively wanted them to go and kill the game rather than manage the game. Which was probably fine for the majority of the second half, but maybe in those last 10 minutes, I think it would have. They did eventually get to the point where they were killing it or trying to, where they were trying to manage it better. But it was probably a little bit more anxious than it needed to be because, ultimately Norwich were. They, again, similar pattern to what we've seen in the past. Norwich started the game very well. They were 2-0 up though this time. That was the big difference. Timo Pukki sat this one out entirely because he's still got a bruised foot. There was an X-ray on his foot because they were worried, obviously, about some sort of break, but that was clear, so that is good news. It was just bruised and puffy, which is why he didn't feature in the squad. So that gave Josh Sargent a rare start as Norwich's striker, effectively. Although Norwich did still play a 4-3-3, they didn't change the formation particularly. And yeah, he headed home a brilliant goal after just 6 minutes. Well worked down the right by Sinani, whose cross was a delight, and it was a really good header for Josh. And speaking to him after, you could just see how good he felt about life, really, off the back of it. So it's great. It was great moment for him. And more on him in a minute. The second goal then came after 16 minutes. Maybe Josh was a little bit more fortunate to get the assist as his shot sort of ricocheted up across to the far post, but Danel Sinani picked it up and buried it in the end. Norwich deserved their 2-goal lead. I thought then Huddersfield sort of flattened their midfield, I thought, and tightened up. And what they started doing was winning the ball in midfield and then giving them opportunities to break. And they did have a few sights of goal. I wouldn't have said Norwich were particularly tight tonight. And also through the middle period of the game, which again is a kind of a pattern. Only Norwich got themselves ahead this time early on. They just didn't have the degree of control. And I think that is because this Norwich team are not going to have that level of possession. Dean Smith wants them to be a possession-based side, but he does want them to play the ball quite quickly. He doesn't want it sideways, and he does want them to press high and win the ball high up the pitch to create chances where the opposition are maybe imbalanced, as he just said post-match. So that idea of long spells of possession and controlling the game, I don't think it's going to be like that. So Norwich are going to have to find better ways of probably managing those circumstances. Because in that point, until then, early in the second half, Tom Lees gets sent off. It was a little bit in the balance. Norwich were 2-0 up, so they had the cushion, but the control of the game wasn't there. Second half, I thought, again, Norwich, the game had its lulls, but obviously a man down, Huddersfield were generally chasing the situation a lot. Norwich had some brilliant chances. I thought Nichols in goal made some really good saves. Might be Norwich not quite as clinical as they should have been. Then they concede a really sloppy goal with 9 minutes to go. Pat Jones, I think he's only a young kid. One of his first handful of championship appearances, his first goal. It's a really good run at pace, and he gets to cut inside and tucks away a really useful shot. But I think the way Grant Hanley doesn't really engage with him, he just sort of lets him run, stands off him and lets him cut inside. It's just far too passive. There's far too much room. I don't actually know what he is supposed to do there. I mean, I guess he could come in a bit tighter, but he obviously doesn't want to get turned, and he's probably wary of the pace. But he's just got to be able to prevent that shot coming in, and he's got to be tighter rather than just literally watching him and letting him do what he did. But then Grant does put in a good block later on to make sure it stays at 2-1. So a degree of recovery there. And that was kind of the passage of the game, really, where, as I said, Norwich probably could have won this 4 or 5-0. They end up winning it 2-1. They've got their first points, their first home win anyway of the season. In fact, they're unbeaten at home in 2 games. 4 points out of 2 games. What more do you want? Well, I tell you what, 3 points against Millwall here on Friday would be a great continuation, and probably turn this into a much more reasonable start. When you look at the fact that both Watford and Burnley were held to draws tonight, and again, probably don't really know where Huddersfield are. They've obviously had a lot of changes. I mean, they were the playoff finalists last season, but there's a lot of changes. There's a different manager, so it's probably a little bit hard to gauge where they were, because I thought some of the times they did move the ball forward really well, better than some of the other teams that I've seen Norwich play. I mean, they probably looked a better outfit, but maybe a bit more stylish than, say, Hull at the weekend, who were probably more physical. And but so far Norwich have looked, as I've been saying, technically superior and more able than everyone they've come up against so far. The issues are they just gift really silly chances. They are profligate with the chances that they create, which are normally a lot. And they have these weird middle bits of games where there isn't much control. So they're kind of dealing with all that. And I think they are also trying to find their way into winning and winning games, and the dynamic of that. It's kind of all new to them off the back of a wretched campaign last year. Let's go through some personnel, shall we? As I said, made up for Josh Sargent. Lots of people have been saying in recent weeks, why is he playing Josh Sargent ahead of Jordan Hugill? I can't understand it. Well, I think tonight you could see exactly why, because I thought Josh's hold-up play, his touch, his runs, and obviously his header were all excellent. I thought Jordan Hugill came on and struggled with his first touch, and it got a bit ragged. And I think that can be just as much about a player coming into a game and having to try and get up to speed of it, even against 10 men, compared to starting, which is something Josh hasn't had the chance to do. I mean, quite clearly he starts for me again against Millwall. I wouldn't change it. Give him that opportunity. I thought there was a really interesting line, which I'll probably write about, where he said basically Josh Sargent said there's been an ultimatum from Dean Smith that if you get goals and assists, you keep your place. If you don't, you'll get out of the team, because there's other players who can do it if you don't. So that's the challenge. And in fairness, Josh has got a goal and assist tonight. Daniel Sinani has done likewise. So those two should be starting on Friday night against Millwall. Daniel moved around beautifully. There's an interesting balance to the team. I thought Anel Hernandez, when he came on, that is exactly the sort of performance I want to see from Anel, because that was great. He ran into space. He turned his men. He also produced some really good balls into the box. And, Gabriel Sara, who came on in the second half, he was unlucky not to score. I thought brilliant save from Nichols to deny him. Jordan Hugill had a great header that was also turned away. And the quality of the balls into the box were better. And, I mean, it's probably heresy to say it, but they just felt more comfortable playing the ball into the option they had with Josh Sargent than they've kind of looked playing the ball into Teemu Pukki. It's almost like this lineup struggles to find the quality and accuracy of through ball that Teemu and cutback that Teemu needs, which I suppose in part is because the players aren't maybe as good as someone like Emi Buendia, but also Dean Smith's challenge constantly, always, will be to get the best out of the players he's got and make it work. And that looked a more effective attacking performance than we've seen this season. And it didn't have Teemu starting. Now, whether you can work it so you have Teemu and Josh both starting and then you give yourself both attacking options without losing elsewhere on the pitch, well, that makes me sort of go giddy-eyed, because I think Norwich could have a serious championship strike force at that point. But for now, I think Josh has earned the right, and Danelle, to keep working and seeing if this has a way forward. Couple of other points. Liam Gibbs played as basically the number 6, so it was still a 4-3-3 tonight. He was the 6 with Dowell on his right and Marcelo Nunez on his left. I thought Kieran Dowell was very good, and he used the ball really well, and he's very good in that 8 when Norwich are kind of in charge of the game, and I think he can cover the ground well. When there probably isn't much pace around him, and he is really good with the ball, and he's got a nice balance playing on the right, but with the left, with being able to look inside with his left foot. So I thought Kieran was excellent today, really good, and probably quite an understated performance, but he had a key role. I think it was in the second goal especially. But yeah, Liam Gibbs is a 6. Again, I'd probably want to see some of the game again, just to see where maybe there were moments in the shortcomings. I think there was one moment in the second half where Liam probably got himself in a bit of a tangle, and that led to one Huddersfield chance before they got their first goal back, or their only goal back. But watch Liam play. He is definitely a midfield championship option. He's doing really well. He's a young lad, youngest central midfield starter, I think, since Corey Smith. I believe that's what Steve Sanders said on Twitter. NCFC numbers, check that out. So I think Liam is proving a brilliant option, and is probably making the absence of Isaac Hayden less noticeable, because I think Norwich would be really short without a performance like that from Liam tonight. And I guess finally, the point to talk about is Kenny McLean at left back. Now, a lot of you watching, I know, because I see the comments, you do tend to dig Kenny out. I see his shortcomings, but I think he offers a lot. I think there's a consistency in Kenny's performance and a quality on the ball that sometimes gets underappreciated. He did a really good job at left back tonight. Probably in a game that suited him, because he could be quite progressive. He could come inside. I mean, he was almost playing like Cancelo, really. He was sort of playing in the half space and coming inside, and it didn't matter because Norwich still had a wider option ahead of him, although sometimes that didn't work because Todd obviously likes to drift inside as well, which is understandable. And that probably changed us slightly as a dynamic once Danelle came on. But, he was able to, deal with most defensive issues, and the game probably lent itself to that a little bit. It does look like that will potentially be the option for Millwall as well, because I don't know. Sam Byram has trained this week, but again, he hasn't played all pre-season. It feels like a stretch to get him in so soon. But fair play, Kenny. I think, out of everyone on the pitch, others were making mistakes. He's had to play in a position which he hasn't really played, but he offered balance. He looked after the ball pretty well, and it worked at this level against a Huddersfield team, which could be all right, but might not be all right. I'm finding it very hard to judge these championship teams, because it does seem to be much for muchness, and I'm yet to see anyone who's maybe think, that's all right, which is good. Because it bodes well for what Norwich could yet do this season. Because at the moment, I'm looking at it and thinking, even Norwich in second gear, conceding some silly chances and having a profligate load at the other end, should still easily be able to finish in the top 10, which would obviously be probably a failure. But they should be all right, whatever that means. They should be fine. So yeah, great. I thought the crowd was good in here tonight. Maybe not as proactive as you'd like, but I guess they're trying to feel their way into it. I would say there's a significant difference between sitting at home watching social media day in, day out, and then the atmosphere inside here. I think it's so refreshed, and people wanting this team to do well, wanting to like them, which I guess is something they just couldn't bring themselves and didn't have the backing to kind of do last season, like the players. So I hope that happens, and that there's a rapport, and everyone maybe just likes themselves a bit more, because I still see the players come off. There's no real hugs between each other. There's no real, I don't know if they've gelled in that way yet. And I hope they can find that character and charisma and energy to look like they're really getting together, and they like each other, and they like playing with each other. I still don't quite see that yet. Not in a bad way. I'm not criticizing them. I'm not saying they're sitting there arguing with each other. But when you watch a team, not even when they're playing, but the moments between, you can tell if they're just feeling it as a group. And obviously then that energy also comes between the players and the crowd, audience, supporters as well. But that does take time, and sometimes that's as much the clicking and rhythm you want to see as what they're doing with the ball on the football pitch. So there we go. Lovely and positive. All it takes is a win. A few wins and everything from all the past will always be completely forgiven. No, but a great night. Given what Norwich have achieved on the night and not given up or blown. So let's be thankful. We'll see what we get on Friday night. Norwich drew twice goalless draws with Millwall 2 years ago. So let's hope they can manage better than that. Final word to Jordan Rhodes. Got a lovely reception. He made the time to properly applaud the Norwich fans as well as he went off. I think it was his first return. A lovely guy, a lovely man, a very good footballer. And he's played his part in Norwich City history already. So it's nice to mark that. Let's see if this current lot can do that themselves. We'll see what we get on Friday. In the meantime, check out the Athletic On the Ball podcast that went out last night. Enjoy that because that was lots of fun. Hot takes are live and extraordinarily hot, so enjoy those. And I'll see you very soon. In the meantime, have an absolutely spiffing Tuesday night. And I'll see you soon. I'll take that off, although I was quite enjoying it. Let me find my video and I shall sign off. Good evening to you all.